All right, folks, let's get started. I think you can probably see that I'm recording this session. This is so that people who aren't here, who wanted to join us but who weren't able to tonight, can follow along at a later time. So hoping and trusting that's all right with you, and knowing that, just hold yourself in the way that you choose to, knowing that we are recording this session. And people are still pouring into the waiting room, so give me just a moment before I can really settle in. Hopefully there won't be too many more late arrivals. If it is okay for you, and it's genuinely okay if it's not, but if it is, if you're willing to switch on your videos, it really creates such a different atmosphere in these kinds of calls, so that we can see each other and get that sense of each other as we're speaking and listening and sharing. Vanita, do you have a question?
No, see, my bandwidth is not very good, so I might have to keep turning my video on and off in between, depending on how I'm receiving it.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to bring it to your notice.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know. That's absolutely fine. Anybody else have sort of connection issues that they want us to be aware of? Maureen?
I do.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So similar for you, you might need to switch on and off every now and then.
And my video freezes from time to time, so I may have to go out and come back in again.
Okay, yeah, that's no problem at all.
And I have to eat a bite, so I'll turn it off briefly and turn it on.
Okay, thanks, Deb. And yeah, if you could just keep yourselves muted if you're not wanting to share, that just helps all of us reduce background noise. People are still joining in. And people are already using the chat to communicate, so that's great. Yeah, please feel free to do that if you want to share anything with the group at any point. Then use the chat. Okay. Ooh, I can feel like lots of thrills of kind of energy in my body right now. I see some nods. Yeah, maybe I'm curious. Let's begin by just taking about a minute in silence to notice the contact with whatever you're in contact with, whether that's a chair or the floor. And just notice if that simple act of bringing your attention into contact. Oh, Maureen, if you could switch off your mic.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so just notice if that act of bringing your attention into contact changes how you feel in your body right now. And as you start to notice contact, you might notice that your breath deepens a little bit. You might notice a feeling of settling in your body. Or you might notice something else. It might be that something that's been with you all day becomes even more obvious. And that might feel comfortable, it might not. But what we're doing right now is just giving ourselves a little bit of time to settle and to notice what is present with us. And if it feels okay for you, if it feels authentic, I invite you to offer a feeling of welcome from your heart to whatever you're noticing in your body right now. Whether that is activation, fidgetiness, worry, relaxation, whatever is there in your body, if it feels authentic for you, offer a feeling of welcome, as though your heart were saying welcome. Okay, and now gently opening eyes and maybe coming back into this shared Zoom space. And maybe just notice if you feel any different than you did when you first rocked up. It certainly helped me. I certainly feel like I'm a bit more settled now and I can actually focus my attention in a bit of a better way. So where to begin? I'd like to introduce myself, maybe give a little bit of context. And then I'd love to hear a few words from the folks who are here. Very little bit, because I think a topic such as this could evoke a lot of talking, a lot of sharing, and that's not a bad thing. But at this beginning point in our conversation, I'll just invite a few words, anything that you want the group to know about you. But I'll begin. Well, actually, maybe I won't begin. Let's begin with you, and then I'll speak to me, and then I'll open the content of our session, which is about white bodies and the cultural somatics of accountability. And I realize those are a lot of words, and probably every single one of those words needs some good, solid attention and collective unpacking for us to reach kind of a shared sense of what it is that we're actually talking about today. And that's kind of what I hope to do today, is I hope that we can kind of take each of those words and phrases and give them our attention. But more on that in a moment. So I'll pass it over to you, and maybe I'll speak your names as I see them on the screen, so that, one at a time, I'll kind of pass the mic around. So just share your name. If you'd like, you can share your pronouns and anything that you'd like this group to know about you. So I'll begin. I see Louise to my left, and there's two people in that screen. So hi, Louise, and the other person, welcome.
Hi. It's just like, shit, she's chosen me first. Louise, she, her, I live in Wales. And what do I want people to know about me? I guess if I was face to face, I'd want people to know that yeah, I'm feeling sort of quiet and tender today, and there's a softness there. I don't know how that applies to a group, and I feel like I should say something exciting about something, but yeah, that's what's with me, and I'll pass it on to Sibby.
Welcome, Louise. Thank you. As you say that, I feel the parts in me that are soft and tender, so I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sibby, and she, her. I'm just staying in Wales for a little bit, and yeah, I don't know, I'm excited. I'm excited for the session. That's probably what I want you to know, is how I'm feeling. Yeah, excited and a little bit anxious and slightly hyper, and I might be pulling some weird faces and getting a bit intense, but that's okay. So yeah, thanks.
Brilliant. Welcome. Thank you. Gary. Oh, Helen, I see you waving. Did you want to speak next? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Jerry, for yielding. I'm Helen in Austin, Texas. where there's more coronavirus active than anywhere maybe in the planet right now. And there's been this controversy in my state about wearing masks. People think it's their freedom lost if they wear a mask, and they won't wear masks. They won't self-isolate, whatever, they won't social distance. And so when everybody was sequestered early on and the Black Lives Matter protest happened, and the streets were flooded with people coming out of their isolated rooms for days, no masks, on top of each other. So now there's a group of people who are arguing that why could we permit this Black Lives Matter event with no mask out in the streets, and nobody's complaining, we're rejoicing that it happened, but at the same time, we don't like it that they're going to their churches, we don't like it that they're going to their rallies.
So Helen, could I just interrupt you for one moment? What you're providing is some really interesting context. I actually really love hearing little windows into different parts of the world on these Zoom calls. But for this check-in, just share like a few words about yourself, if you would.
Okay.
You.
Okay. I am at war with the mosquitoes and fire ants and jiggers and spiders. And I am in misery, itching and itching at the moment. That's it.
Thank you. Welcome. Over to you, Gary.
Hi, I'm on the East Coast of the United States in North Carolina. I'm not sure the reason I'm here is I'm really not sure what the title of this meeting means, but I sense that there's some powerful business behind it. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking it.
Cool. Thanks, Gary. I hope we can. Kate Kim.
Hi all, I'm Kate, she, her. I'm in West Wales, Llandeilo. What do I want you to know about me? I'm passionate about ending white racism, and I'm full of grief.
Thank you, Kate. Welcome. Akiko.
Hello, I'm Akiko, living in Sweden. I'm Japanese, and I've been living here for 26 years. So it's almost same, Japan and Sweden. And I'm very curious about this session, white skin. I was very curious what will happen, because I want to know, because here in Sweden there are lots of racism too, and lots of conflict I see, but I feel I'm kind of outside as being Japanese, so I'm very curious about this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome. Vanita.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vinita. I come from India. And what brings me to this session is the cultural somatics of accountability. I'm not white, but I think any society which has the dynamics of majority, minority, and historical relationships, this discussion will have very important stuff. And I have been personally thinking about lots of things around this issue. And that's what brings me here. Thank you very much for opening this space up.
Thanks, Vanita. Manon.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Manon. I live in Belgium at the moment, and I'm from France originally. And I feel very excited and grounded. I feel very passionate as well. I'm not sure where the topic is going to go, but I feel it's the right place. I feel like I'm in the perfect spot. And just before this session, I was I'm feeling a lot of emotion, but I'm feeling a lot of love at the same time, backed by passion. But just before this session, I was actually watching a video about neo-colonialism in my own country and countries and from my own culture. And I guess that at the moment, to make it short, I'm feeling a lot of connection with people that I didn't see before, who have been minorities in my own countries and my own culture. And I'm humbly educating myself.
Thanks, Manal. Over to you, Midi.
Hi, I'm Midi. I'm right on the edge of Los Angeles County, which means that I've been one of the ground zero places for the recent protests. I'm so grateful that those protests really reawoke my very strong activist self. I'm aware of feeling passionate about confronting whiteness in myself and in other people, and therefore I'm very cautious about myself because I know about my messianic tendencies. So I'm here to learn everything I can, and with the intent to be more effective. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. Welcome. Maureen, I see you next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maureen. I'm calling from Grenada in the West Indies. Originally from Canada, but been here for over 25 years. And I've been doing anti-racism work for quite a while. And I just remember Ruby Sales, who's African-American civil rights movement leader. I listened to an interview with her, and she said, us white body folks have to start doing the work with white body folks. And I really heard that. And so the past year or so, I've been doing that work, holding space for white folks to do this work. So I'm so looking forward to learning from you, Madelanne, and from everybody in this space. So feeling grateful, and thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Welcome. Christina Vecta, I see you next.
Yeah, it's Christina. Vechta is the town that I'm currently in. I'm based in North Germany at the moment. Yeah, what I want this group to know about me, I guess also like I'm really curious, and I feel like we want to be here. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you. Maureen Campbell.
Hi, I'm from the southwest of England. I'm a movement therapist, so I'm curious about the somatic side of your topic. And I think I've been reawakened to be active, but I don't know where to start. So I'm curious to know what is going to be discussed and learn from other people, really.
Brilliant, thank you. Electra.
Hello, everybody. Electra, she, her, and thank you very much, Madelanne. I appreciate you holding this space for us. I'm here in Los Angeles, California, the United States, also known as Tongva land. And I'm a first-generation white American with British parents, and had post-traumatic response to some of the looting that had occurred during the uprisings with George Floyd, that I managed to trace those back to stuff that happened in my own lifetime, but I also recognize there's probably more layers to it than that. So very excited and interested to learn more. And right now I'm feeling conflicted because I'm actually supposed to be at work right now. So this seemed really important, but work's important too. So I'm glad I'm here, but I feel slightly torn because I'm supposed to be at work.
Thanks, Electra. I'm enjoying feeling like slightly like naughty about inviting you here instead of having you be at work. Gaia.
Hi, I'm she, her pronouns. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, US. And right now, I'm just really enjoying hearing all your voices. It just feels really lovely to be here with all of you. And yeah, so mostly I'm feeling joy right now and looking forward to learning more. And I've done this, I've done work around white privilege for a long time, and I'm very curious about the somatic piece because I do teach somatic meditation, and so I'm really curious, and I know I always have so much more to learn. So thanks.
Thank you, Gaia. Welcome. Maddie Longhurst. I see you next.
Hi, thank you. I'm feeling like I really don't want to be looking at a screen, and I've been staring at one for many, many hours, for many, many days. And I'd love to just be in a field with all of you. How amazing that would be. I'm feeling quite exhausted, really interested in opening my journey in the exploration about whiteness and color and privilege and history and the convergence of human beings forced to be separated from each other. Yeah, and I feel like all of the good work for change is accelerated so much when you do it with the body. We spend so much time in our heads and thinking and talking and like all of this bit, and forget how much our bodies guide us. And so that, yeah, really interested in what this is. Don't really know, but like Gary, feel there's some powerful stuff here to be had. So thanks.
Thanks, Maddie. Welcome. Deb, over to you.
Hi, everyone. She, her. I live on Turtle Island, which is also known as the United States, and I live surrounded by the Great Lakes, which are very beautiful. I grew up in an all-white community, and it's amazing to me the diversity of my relationships now. And so this anti-racism work is very important. Yesterday, I was asked to be part of a panel on anti-racism, which was really exciting and also makes me a little nervous about what kind of conversation is going to come up. But I really realized that this is a lifelong journey, so I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Welcome. Tada, I see you next.
Oh yeah, sorry. Why don't you sharing our names and then like who we are and then how we're feeling?
Your name and anything that you want the group to know about you.
Sure. My name is Tada. I'm based in unceded Coast Salish territories, which is so-called Vancouver, BC. So that's the home of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. I'm a hyphenated Canadian, Japanese Canadian immigrant, so to speak. And am I loud enough? Probably not, eh? Yeah, I'm a developer and practitioner of cultural somatics, and I met with Madelanne was actually trainer of mine, or I guess sort of TA of mine in a training, and then reconnected around doing somatic work around like the subject of anti-racist work through the body, particularly around white folks and ancestral trauma. That was about, I think that was in 2017. And we've been in each other's orbits for the last little while. And I'm doing a presentation in a workshop tomorrow with a colleague. But I saw Madeleine's list on the, on the people invited to the summit. So it's been like a few different orbits, and yeah, we're moving around each other. And I don't know, maybe it's good to, I think it's a small thing to mention, but yeah, I started using the word cultural somatics as well as a Black therapist named Resma Menachem in about, I think Resma started using the word in about 2015 to describe the work that we're doing. And about 2017, I started using the term cultural somatics or cultural somatic therapy around 2017. And it basically is like a marker that we've been using. And it's like a community term. It's not, cultural somatics TM doesn't exist or anything like that, but it's just been like a community term that we've been using around, somatic work that is like very somatic. I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's not somatics to manage anti-racism work. It's somatics that is the work itself. It's the work of anti-oppression work. So I just want to, I don't know. Yeah, I thought I'd share that. And I'm happily sitting in with you all. Thank you. Thanks, Madeline.
Thanks, Tada. Really lovely to have you here. Yeah, it's great to have a co-conspirator present, as Tada shared, and then I'll keep passing it around. Tada and myself and a few others have been kind of co-creating this field of culture, what is now called cultural somatics, after the term was brilliantly, I think kind of co-arose with Tada and Resma, almost like at exactly the same moment.
Yeah, it was independent of each other, and then we had like a bit of like, oh, are we actually doing the same thing? And I was like, let's just not trademark it. I mean, basically there was an intention to not actually, to keep the field open, even though we document the history of it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we're creating history here together, folks, because this field of cultural somatics is still quite new. I mean, Resma's work has really exploded, which is a fantastic thing. So many of you have likely heard of his work. And Tada's work and my work is all evolving, but it's still a relatively new frontier. But I really appreciate you saying what you just said, Tada, about the work is the anti-racist practice, like practicing cultural somatics, which is actually what we're currently doing. And I'll speak more to that shortly. This is the work. So, all right, we're getting into it already. That's great. But before we do, I'll pass it over to Jose.
Hi, I'm Jose from Portugal, and I'm really curious with the title. And obviously, I have read the description, and I think it is very important to me as an individual, and just after I learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. And I just typed in the name of Resma Menachem into the chat so that if anybody wants to go and check out his work, then please do. It's very powerful. Diana. Surprise.
Hello. My name is Diana, she, her. I'm on coastal Miwok territory in Occidental California. And what do you think? I'm sorry if there's this noise. Somebody has a really loud car. You hear it? I think what I'd like to share about myself is that I feel like I have created an intensive educational program for myself, that I feel a bit exhausted around the amount of energy that I've been putting into staying in touch with what's happening in the world, and also diving deeper again. I've explored a lot of discussions, and I've been to women's gatherings centered around discussing social justice and anti-racism work and lineage healing and white privilege, and I'm excited to be in this space. I was really excited at the convergence of the different topics mentioned in the title, and I'm very a body-oriented person, and I've been very cerebral, very engaged as much as I can be, and finding that it's pushing my limits around what I can comprehend and integrate in a short period of time. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here. I'm very hopeful about the possibility of more of this type of work and discussion changing the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Welcome. I think there are just a few more people left to go. The boxes have been jumping around on my screen a bit, so I've lost track of who's yet to speak. But Grant, I know that I haven't passed it over to you yet, so over to you, and then we'll take the remaining people.
Thank you, Madelanne. I sympathize with Maddie because I'm a bit jaded at the moment with many Zoom calls. I'm calling in from the Netherlands. I grew up in New Zealand, and 40 years here, 22 years there. Something you could know about me, which is very recent. I'm in a school of creative leadership in the Netherlands, and we do programs for anywhere in the world. And this morning we had one with the Emirates in Dubai. And I was facilitating this, and it was about their vision of 2070. Now, in my books, 2070 is Armageddon if we do nothing. And yet these leaders were thinking of wonderful visions which included nothing about the demise of the planet or institutional disruption. And I'm still coping with that right now. It's not, it wasn't easy to listen to. And so that with this subject, which was a magnet for me when I signed up for it, yeah, not necessarily an easy place to be in right now.
Thank you, Grant. I see a person who doesn't have a name on their screen. Would you like to speak? And you're in a red chair in front of a window. I think. Oh, Ellen, your name appeared when you unmuted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, actually, it's red. Yeah, yeah. I'm zoomed out too, and that's why I'm kind of. I'm in Washington State on Whidbey. I'm out on an island. I overlook the Salish Sea. I can wave at my friends in Canada who live on Vancouver Island. I have been doing anti-racism work on some level or another since in my professional career, and you know, for many years, and I'm starting to re-enter that again with the opportunities that are arising. And one of the things I'm doing is unpacking my own ancestral karma. And I've been living in that in my body. That's been an embodied practice over the last, I'm gonna say, few weeks as a result of the things that are triggering that. So thank you for having this session, and I'm looking forward to learning.
Thank you, Ellen. Welcome. I see 3 folks down at the bottom with screens off. I'll just speak your name, and if you're there and you want to introduce yourself, please do. Deb?
I'm sorry, I've gone already. I just was finishing my lunch. Thank you.
Okay, great. Oh, right, gotcha. Okay, Laura?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. I live in the UK. I'm actually in Wales right at this moment. I haven't been feeling hugely well today, and I haven't done all the many jobs I was meant to do before this. So a little bit of me is elsewhere on that. And I'm kind of feeling strangely vulnerable about, or fragile or delicate about being filmed for some reason. Normally, I'm really not a shy person, but I think it's more what's happening in my body that's making me feel that vulnerability rather than, I mean, I know I'm likely to say silly things or like uneducated things. So I think it's more that I'm just feeling a little bit, yeah, like distant in my body from contact with people. So it's super unusual for me and I don't really know why it's happening, and maybe I've already started some kind of somatic process. I don't know. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to assume I do stuff with family constellations, and the other thing I was meant to be doing now was family constellations. So maybe I'm like across the two spaces doing some kind of weird representation. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm just being a bit shy. So it's really, really great to be here, and thank you. And if it's okay that I pop in and pop out, it would just feel more comfortable for me today, unusual as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I think, you know, I wouldn't normally record a session like this because it is a vulnerable space for us to be talking about our bodies and our somatic life. In my experience, as soon as you even mention body-based experience, it awakens like a whole ecology of experience. It's a really powerful thing to do, to invoke the body. And so that in itself is vulnerable. And then we're looking at a topic that has a lot of intensity around it potentially, and it's a pretty loaded topic. So it's another source of vulnerability. So I really had to think long and hard about my willingness to record this session and the potential impacts of that. And my choice was that the potential benefits of others being able to access this call are important to me, and hopefully I'm sure important to all of us who are present, because obviously ideally the impacts of what we talk about this afternoon will reach beyond this call. So it's not just an experience for us to have a good chat. I think we're all here in service of something that's bigger than that. So my hope is that is the case, and that this recording serves a good purpose, and I really honor and hear the complexity of that. So if you do need to turn off your screen, then that's absolutely fine. Shanti, I don't think we've heard from you, if you're there. Okay. So has anybody not made themselves present yet that is here? I think we've all spoken. It's really, I mean, it takes time to do this, but it's really important to me to have a sense for who's in the room, because to me this work is about relationship. This work is about looking at, and not just looking at, but sensing and feeling what relationship is to each one of us in our own bodies and minds, and what histories of relationship are imprinted into our bodies and minds. And so if we begin this kind of a conversation from a place where, for example, I just switch on Zoom and I just start talking about all the things that I think in my head, and then people can kind of switch off their screens and just listen with half an ear while they're, doing whatever else they're doing, which I have done, by the way. I'm not saying that's like wrong. Life is really intense in this day and age, and I often find myself tuning in only partially to the conversations I'd actually like to bring my full presence to. But to really honor and respect this conversation, and the fact that what we're looking at are wounds of connection as they live in our bodies and our cultures. It feels really important to me to approach this topic in a connected way. So thank you everybody for speaking into the into the space. And terrific, I'm seeing Laura, I'm seeing you right into the text. Thank you very much for that. And I'm also really glad because what I'm hearing is that there's a load of resource in this space. There's already a lot of experience, a lot of people doing anti-racist work, a lot of people really holding that curiosity within themselves around racism and identity and human dynamics. And so I feel really privileged to be speaking with all of you and to be part of this conversation. So my name is Madelanne Rust D'Eye, but my friends have always called me Rusty Eye because it's hard to resist that with a surname like mine. So you can too, as long as you're being friendly about it. I'm Canadian from Toronto, but I live in Scotland right now. And from a really, really early age, I was really, really torn up inside about living in the world. You know, I couldn't quite name it when I was young, and I'm not sure. I don't want to bore you all with my story if you've already heard it. So how many people have watched my video? Just give a wave from, thanks Electra. Okay, so not so many people. So I'll speak just a little bit about how I came to create body-informed leadership, which will inform what we're talking about. So, so I grew up in a big city. Oh, and I should say I'm she, her, and I identify as white. I grew up in Toronto, and I just couldn't quite name the suffering that I was carrying in my body, and I couldn't quite find a reason for it in this lifetime. I grew up with privilege, loads of good things happened to me, and yet I felt utterly disintegrated inside. Like the parts of me inside didn't quite connect. Like all of these subtle systems that are meant to be interweaving and flowing together within me weren't doing that somehow. And I have felt a lot of grief about the world that I was born into, and I ended up doing a lot of activism and getting, you know, really showing up in the parts of my culture that were particularly wounded. And in Canada, that often constellates around the impacts of colonization and the tremendous social disparities and injustices that have resulted from that and are very, very alive in Canada. And so I became involved in anti-racist activism, social justice work, volunteered for years at a First Nation run outreach center for homeless people. And I was the only white person among many Indigenous folk. And that's been kind of a motif in my life. And what that's done is it's forced me to be able to see myself as a white person. It's forced me to have to be really, really uncomfortable to be relating with people who my ancestors have harmed, and having to show up anyway and be the best version of myself that I can be and become somebody who is worthy of mutually respectful relations. And so the journey that I've been on to create body-informed leadership has come from that really personal place in me. And so I'm just trying to think about where to go with this topic because I wasn't sure who would be in the space tonight. So I've designed a few different options. But I think, oh, and yeah, before I launch into it, I just want to really thank you all. I really want to thank, you know, the folks of color who have shown up for this call, and really thank you for your willingness to be here for a conversation about white bodies. I feel really gifted by your presence. And thank you for the white identified people who are here too. Thank you for your courage and presence about this topic. And really, I hope that we can just sort of hold this subject with kindness and with curiosity. So, so I got trained up as a somatic psychotherapist because I had to make sense of my experience of the world somehow. And that really helped. I learned some trauma healing practices. I learned some somatic paradigms for the body and the mind and how they interconnect. And then the task became, how do I apply what I learned there to culture? How does it become not just about me being in a therapy room with somebody, helping them reflect on their internal experience? And that is a very sacred and important thing. And many of us really need to do that. But my interest was, how do I take some of these tools that I learned and apply them to culture? Because I could see that there was a need for that. I could see that some of the ways that I was learning to see the body and the mind and the interface between the two were actually really, really relevant to some of the illnesses that I saw in the cultures around me, and particularly in my own culture. But that came later, because I actually found it really hard to identify what my culture was. I shared with you that I spent a lot of time in communities where I was, in a minority of white people. And so that really helped me to see myself as a white person. But there was another layer to that I found really hard to access, which is like, what does that mean? What is white culture? I mean, like, I have European ancestry, but I was born in Canada, 4th, 5th generation Canadian. I went to Scotland when I was 16, thinking like, oh, I'm going to go visit the land of my ancestors, and I'm going to receive some sort of cultural learning, and it's going to make me feel more solid in myself, and it's going to make me feel like I know who I am. And I went to Scotland and I felt absolutely no connection to the place. I was like, lots of grass, not so many trees, got some sheep, cows, cool. And I really wanted to get into it, but it just didn't. The magic that I kind of hoped would happen didn't happen for me. I've since moved back to the UK, and I'm actually really starting to feel connected to this place. But it's taken 5 years of being here and spending time with communities of people who are really restoring their connection to the land here. And I have to say that that's been one of the biggest gifts for me about being here in the UK, is seeing the work that's happening around nature connection and the intention that some communities are bringing here to staying in place, listening to the world around them, and creating a relationship. So I want to say that there's a lot that is being restored here that I find really inspiring. But it's taken me several years to really, find that and find my own connection to that and find my sense of history in that. But when I was in Canada, before I came here, I was like, so what does it mean to be white? Like, I know that I'm privileged, and I know that there are systems that support that, and I feel horrible about that. But beneath that layer of the systems, what is there? What is there that created those systems? What is there in my white identity that is perhaps shared by other white people who maybe they come from a different European lineage than me? But if we're all sort of being racialized or racializing ourselves, or existing as white bodies, and this is why I use the phrase white bodies, because white bodies are treated differently than other bodies, and it doesn't matter what lineage we come from, because of the global systems that have been established over the last few hundred years and longer. Whatever your experience of class, of privilege, or lack thereof, the white body that you were born into invokes a certain a certain shared experience, and it's important to me to acknowledge that, and it's important to me to really compassionately and courageously look at what is that shared experience, what are its roots. And so I couldn't really, that was a question I couldn't really answer, because like I said, I think the, oh, hearing from Grant. Okay, yeah, thank you for letting us know. And that makes me wonder if I'm speaking too long. Shall I continue speaking a little bit, or do we want to move into something experiential? I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay, so I'll keep speaking a little bit. So the questions that I had about my own identity, I realized were very hard to answer, because the colonization of my people happened so long ago that there's no intact transmission of what my people were like in their indigenous state. You know, back 1,000, 2,000 years ago, well, 2,000 years ago is approximately when the UK was colonized by Rome. Is that right? Yeah, about that long ago. That, you know, there's no transmission from that period to me. So there's no way for me and other people of European ancestry whose indigenous ancestors were colonized at that point as well. There's no way for us to get a cultural transmission. There are fragments, and I just have to say, I think that is absolutely something that we can restore within ourselves, even without a transmission. And that's something that body-informed leadership is all about. So I don't want to be too doom and gloomy, but in terms of creating a sense of my own identity, I couldn't really get those stories. Those stories weren't handed down to me. And so what I started to really learn from was the field of somatic trauma therapy. Because as I was practicing as a somatic trauma therapist, I started noticing that the typical challenges that my clients who were presenting with PTSD, they said, I've got PTSD, please help me out. The ways that they were struggling in their bodies and minds, and I'll speak to those really shortly, I started to see patterns in that. And I started to see that actually those patterns of fragmentation within their soma, within their bodies, are actually expressed by the dominant culture in the West. And that the dominant culture in the West conditions bodies, somas, to follow that similar pattern of dysregulation that I was seeing in my clients who had PTSD. So, so I'm going to speak to that a little bit now. And I'll just say, and this is what has come to constellate my understanding of whiteness, but not as I think it is in any essential sense. I don't think that white people are born a certain way, but I do think that we have inherited and continue to transmit a certain lineage that I think we're all here because we want to take responsibility for. And we're all here because, and I'm speaking we to the white-bodied folks in the room, and I'm saying thank you to the non-white-bodied folks who are present for this conversation and who are perhaps using similar frameworks and similar approaches within their own communities. So I'm not saying this is unique or that these tools are unique to white-bodied communities, but this is where I'm going with them. But Kate, did I see that you had something you wanted to say?
Thanks. Sorry, Madeline. I know you're going to talk about this more. I just wondered if you could just say that the start of that sentence again about dominating cultures in the West, something Soma, and I just didn't quite catch that, and I wondered if you'd say that again before you expanded on it.
Sure. I think I said something about the dominant culture in the West, and that's largely been defined by white bodies, by European and Euro diaspora lineages, that it shows similar patterns of fragmentation and of disease as what I witnessed in the bodies of the people I was working with therapeutically who had PTSD. So, and this is where the term cultural somatics, and Tara knows all about this, and Tara offers beautiful work around this. This is, and thank you once again for this brilliant term, cultural somatics. This is what cultural somatics refers to, is the fact that the way that we are in our bodies, and I'll speak more just really shortly to what I mean by this, the way that we are in our bodies is the place from which we generate our cultures. And that then there's this other reinforcing relationship, then our cultures impact how we are in our bodies. And we really need to understand that interconnection in order to be able to get at the root of cultural transformation that I think we're trying to get to as white-bodied people in this call, and as people of color in this call as well. I leave it to you to sort of reflect on if any elements of what I'm speaking to speak to you and your cultures as well. Gary, before I move on.
I was just going to ask you to, I expect you will, but I was going to ask you to say more what you mean by fragmentation.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm going. But before I do, Christina.
Yeah, I just wanted to voice I'm feeling kind of a little bit tired of only listening after 1 hour. Yeah.
So what I was going to say before I move on, let's take a pause. Let's just take, a minute, maybe 2, but don't go far. And maybe give your body a little shake. I can lead you through it if you want. So feel free to listen to this part or just switch off for a couple of minutes and do what you need to do. But if you want to stay with me and have a little shakeout, then I'll lead you in it. So if you would, find your feet on the floor. You probably already know where your feet are, but let them find the floor. And shake your feet. And shake your hips. And shake your shoulders and your arms and your hands and your head. And you might want to make some sound. You might want to take some long sighs out, going, oh. Actually, everyone who's still here, try that if you would. I'll do it one more time. You can do it as many more times as you want, and notice the feeling of the vibration of sound in your body. So if everybody could come back. And I'd love for us to actually do this all together. It can feel really awkward for people who aren't used to making sound, but your sounds are all turned off, so nobody can hear you anyway. I'm the only one that you guys can hear. Oh, Tana, you're giving so many awesome references. Thank you. This is so rich. Be sure to capture everything that's in the chat. You are a nerd. So am I. Bless the nerds. Okay, so what I'm going to ask us to do is what I call the VU, and you'll see why. It's a sound practice, and while we do it, I invite you to notice the feeling of the vibration of sound in your body, and notice what happens in your body as you make this sound. So it sounds like this. It's going to sound really weird, but I'm okay with that. So this is what it's going to sound like. You can do it on different pitches or whatever, but just try making a long VU sound and see what happens in your body. And again, inhale. And then just notice how you feel after you do that. You might feel super awkward because that's not a usual thing for you to do or listen to. Or you might, what I'm noticing is, well, actually, if anybody noticed anything in their body while they did that, could you just type it into the chat? Any sensations that you noticed in your body? So Maureen felt vibrations throughout the body. Deb felt tingling and aliveness. Kate felt fizzy legs. Manon feeling good. Maureen, warmth at the back of the belly. And more coming through. Yes, yeah, Maddie, exactly. It really lengthens the breath. To add sound to it, we really get, it's like we get to sort of relish the whole full breath. And so what that activity does is it speaks to our nervous system. So when we lengthen our exhale, when we make our exhale longer than our inhale, it sends a message to our nervous system that we're safe. There's no danger in our environment. And because in the logic of the nervous system, if you have time for a nice leisurely exhale, you must not be under attack. Because if we're in danger, you know, we need as much oxygen sucking into the body as we can get so that we're fully mobilized. But if we give a long exhale, then our nervous systems think, oh, there's no danger, I can relax. And what that exercise also does is it creates a pleasant, for many people, a pleasant sensation in the body. You know, just the vibration of sound, it's like a little massage inside your body, which is also really reassuring and gives a sense of safety in the body. It's okay to notice my sensory experience because it's not going to overwhelm me. So the reason why I'm bringing this is because of trauma. So what trauma or PTSD, which is sort of the chronic state that our bodies can go into if we've experienced trauma, what happens in that state is that our nervous systems, so our nervous systems have one job, really. Well, two jobs. Ha! Our nervous systems have two jobs. One job is to keep us alive. And that's the fight or flight nervous system or the freeze faint nervous system, which many of you have probably heard about. Fight or flight. It's like our nervous systems, they're not really that interested in subtlety and nuance. They're just scanning the environment for, am I going to survive? And is there danger? Is there life-threatening danger? And if there is, if our bodies, because, well, I won't go too far into that, but our bodies are the doorways into our brains. So if our bodies are perceiving danger in the environment, if our brains are perceiving danger in the environment, then one of those two options is going to get activated in our nervous system. Fight or flight, freeze faint. And it's not just a little thing that happens. Like this 100% transforms, oh, lost somebody else. This 100% transforms our consciousness when this happens, because our bodies are not interested in empathy or connection or self-awareness. In fact, those higher faculties in the brain are sacrificed because the blood is needed in other parts of the body to fight or run or faint or freeze. So when we're in an activated nervous system state, our bodies and our brains and our consciousness completely change. The other function of our nervous system, other than keeping us alive, which is what I just described, is social engagement, is to facilitate bonding. As mammals, we need to bond with other mammals in order to survive. So I don't want to bore you all to tears about that. So we have these different nervous system states that are available to us. Two of them are about survival. One of them is about bonding, which is also about survival, but it has much more nuance. When we have PTSD or trauma, well, when we have chronic trauma, PTSD, then we kind of get stuck. Our nervous systems get stuck in one of the defensive states that I've named. And the other thing that happens is that the body feels very unsafe, because the body is where we experience sensation, and it's where we store away the painful memories about the traumas that we've experienced. So when I work with clients who have PTSD, the first thing I have to help them do is restore a sense of safety in their bodies. And when I say a sense of safety in their bodies, think about the feeling that you maybe had just after we did the VU. That's like a felt sense of safety, like it's okay in here. Actually, it's kind of nice in here. I can bring my attention in here. Being in here is not going to overwhelm me. And that takes very, very incremental stages. You know, you never want to just tell somebody, feel your body now. Somebody who's traumatized. Okay, so you just feel that. That's going to overwhelm them. That's not going to help them to heal. So what we do is we learn the skill of titration. And titration means feeling overwhelmed, feeling discomfort, one drop at a time, and then coming back to a feeling of safety and settledness. Again and again, feeling the discomfort or intensity, coming back to safety and settledness. And over time, what that allows is for the person who's experienced a trauma to very, very gradually integrate the suffering they've experienced and reclaim the pain of their experience. It doesn't need to be compartmentalized off in a part of their body they avoid anymore. It can actually be felt and acknowledged and integrated. And there's a lot of different brain systems involved in that process, which I won't go into right now. So one of the hallmarks, therefore, of trauma, PTSD, is that the body is very unsafe. And feeling a sensation in the body often triggers a nervous system response, fight or flight, freeze or faint, because of the fear around that sensation. Oh my gosh, is this a sign that I'm going to have to relive the pain of my trauma? Oh my gosh, it's dangerous. My body is dangerous. My nervous system is activating to try and keep me safe from this danger that's in my body that's actually just a sensation. So that is, and I'm not saying that people who have PTSD are wrong and bad. These things happen in the body without choice. Nobody chooses that. And it takes a lot of support and compassion to help restore that sense of safety in the body by incrementally, bit by bit, touching into the intensity, coming back to safety over time. The problem is that when a lot of bodies are dysregulated in that way, it becomes culture. So when my body is dysregulated because of trauma, I will avoid things that make me feel my body because my body feels unsafe. And I will unconsciously fear things that represent the body. In the European lineage, this often constellated around women or the feminine and nature. So you see, what I'm speaking to is, although Europeans and European diaspora people, although we can't name the trauma that happened many generations back, we've inherited this somatic state of fragility, of activation, without knowing that that's what we've inherited. And there's all this research now. I mean, many of you have probably heard of epigenetics, of somatic trauma healing practices like somatic experiencing, interpersonal neurobiology, infant attachment, all of these spheres of research. Thank you, Vinita. Thanks for being here. All of these spheres of research are showing that our body-mind state, for example, the one that is generated during trauma or PTSD, is passed through the generations until it can be healed. And so fundamentally, what I believe we're seeing in whiteness, you know, as it's playing out right now, is a mind-body a mind-body state of dysregulation that we've inherited unknowingly. And so the cultural practices to restore ourselves. So, well, before I go there, I just want to ask, are there any questions about what I've said so far? Because I've spoken a lot now. Before I speak to what can we do to restore ourselves?
I guess the question in my mind is the extent to which the reclamation, the restoration, the regeneration needs to happen individually, and or what the potential is for collective healing together. That line between apparently of separation between individual and collective. It feels very present at the present time of where the healing edge is.
Thank you. Good question. Gary, before I go to you, I'll just speak to this a little bit, because I think this is what has happened for the last 50 years or so, is that a lot of white people and non-white people have been doing their healing individually, because it is a very personal journey. You know, each person's soma is really personal. But the edge right now is to start to see, where are the things that I'm experiencing personally reflected and embodied by my culture? And where does my culture need some of those healing practices? So if I'm learning how to titrate my internal experience, moving from intensity back to a feeling of goodness, what is the cultural equivalent of that? How do we create cultural spaces that enable us to process overwhelming intensity in a safe way that we can integrate? That means we need to make more space, more shared space for feeling our bodies together, more shared space for expressing grief, more shared space for feeling the whole range of our experience. You know, the first thing that happened when the Europeans came and colonized the indigenous people in North America is they made their dance and song and prayer illegal. And that happened to European indigenous ancestors as well, because dance and prayer and song are somatic resources that allow us to integrate many, many, many layers of our life experience. They help us titrate. They help us to feel without getting flooded. So that's just one example of how the personal somatic healing that we're doing needs to become cultural. And when we start to do that, then we start to see more clearly the illness that our culture has carried. So I'm just wanting to read what's written into the chat, because I think it's important. Diana, you've said, can I read it out loud? Is that okay? Okay. I appreciate the sharing of these books. Something came up I wanted to name. I often struggle because I don't have any roots in the UK. So sometimes I feel triggered, while happy for them, when I see all these white people connecting with Celtic or other ancient lineages from those areas. I don't identify with those traditions really, though paganism and earth-based spirituality feels true for me, but I can't plug into it. And I feel like it's connected to my ancestors. I can't plug into it and feel like it's connected to my ancestors. I'm from the Eastern European Jewish diaspora and from Italian and Sicilian lineages. It seems so hard to find indigenous roots from those places that resonate with me. I want to go back before religion. I can't seem to find any resources and I feel so much grief about it. Do you know any? Yeah, I'd just like to really take a moment with what you've shared. It is such a painful thing to not feel a sense of connection to a particular lineage that might support restoration. Am I getting that right? Ish. Yeah, thanks for presencing that in the space. And what I would say to that, although I still want to make space for other contributions, is that my belief, because I've personally enjoyed connecting with folks here in the UK, some of whom are white and some of whom are not. It's a whole bunch of folks right now who are restoring relationship to land here in the UK. I've felt a sense of restoration within myself, connecting with those communities, but it's not because I feel like there's a cultural transmission from the past that comes through. It's because I feel like we're building something that is both very ancient and very new and not attached to a particular lineage. And the other piece I want to say is that I think restoring ourselves somatically, the end point with that, I think when we're healthy, when we have a healthy soma, we're actually able to be in felt sense connection with our life experience in a moment by moment way that feels tremendously meaningful and that connects us inherently to the places we're in and the people we're with, and restore and connects us inherently to existence in the most meaningful and big sense of it. When I'm in a healthy place in my soma, I am so filled by the meaningfulness of life that I don't need a tradition to explain that to me. However, when enough bodies are connecting in that meaningful way to life on a moment by moment basis, and they're filled by the meaningfulness of life, I believe that they create culture from that place that develops that into an art. And I think, that's what I see in Indigenous traditions, is connection developed into an art. So I speak to the future in all of this. I really think that if by entering into our cultural identity through the doorway of our somatic individual and cultural selves, that we restore what needs to be restored so that we're capable of creating a connected culture into the future. So I wanted to speak that to those places within myself and perhaps within the group that really yearn for some frickin' instructions, some frickin', instruction manual for how to do this. And if it's just not there, I think we can create it by restoring ourselves somatically and by restoring our cultural soma. So I'm not able to track, the chat, but I see hands. So Gary, I saw your hand first, and then Helen, I saw yours come up as well.
I'm appreciating, the explanation that you've been giving all along here. But I have to say also that my attention is more specifically focused on the American experience, the American multiracial trauma of slavery and racism. And if I try to interpret what you're saying in those terms, and having done a little bit of thinking about this before, I'm noticing that it has something to do with home. And there is a character to the American experience that is still homeless. Let's say a separation from European indigenous roots. And there's a war going on in America about whose home it is. And the African American experience is, not multi-generational, it's multi-centuries, and they're just as cut off from home as the white people. But the white people are the ones who are claiming home and excluding, the other. That's kind of the way I've been looking at it. And, there is a somatic experience at the heart of that. There is a mutual trauma at the heart of that. But I think the journey out of that trauma is a very separate and different journey for non-white people than it is for white people.
So what I'm hearing you say, I just want to make sure I'm catching you. what I'm hearing you say is that for you, there's a sort of shared trauma happening in the United States right now around homelessness.
Long term.
And that there's kind of this power struggle that you're perceiving that white people are initiating around trying to claim home.
That racism is the assertion of ownership of the land.
So what I would say is that yes, like that is a systematic manifestation of inequality, but that inequality itself starts out in the body. And so yes, you know, there's just so many, thank you for sharing your observations. And I think we could look at so many instances of how inequality plays out. And what I'm really interested in is, how did we learn inequality? Where did that even come from? Anybody have any? I would be disingenuous to say, does anybody have any thoughts? Because I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I also don't want to inflict them on you all. But that's a really important question to ask, is where did we learn inequality? Where did we learn that in order for us to have a home, those people need to not have a home? Where did that logic come from? Because I don't think that, you know, everything that I know about neuroscience and human development tells a story of interconnection, tells a story of, I know who I am because I'm connected to you, and that I am because we are. Okay, I'm going to be a nerd right now. There's this awesome neuroscientist who many of you have maybe heard of called Daniel Siegel. And he says there's no such thing as me and you, there's MWE. I'm going to write that into the chat, MWE, from a neurobiological perspective. So if that is our neurobiological design, where did we learn this fragmented sense of me versus you? Before I speak to that, Helen, do you still want to speak to what you had? Yeah. Oh, you're on mute.
I promise no more than 2 minutes. You can stop me. So relax, I'm not gonna take away. I have to pay homage to Emily Conrad, my teacher of 10 years. She died a few years ago. She was of Jewish background and Holocaust background, but the point is, the trauma, one thing she taught us, that trauma might start, especially in our culture, in birth, because instead of a kind of birth that is a victory, of going through the narrows, as we say in the Jewish culture, it's a trauma and a separation. But basically, she worked with sound for 50 years. She got into it in Haiti with the waves and the chanting. And she said, I want to go before language, before any culture. She said, ignorant bipeds only know a little bit about the body, but the cells and the water, the fluid, the cells and the water, they can teach us, they can heal us, they know what the body needs. So she's worked on sending sound through the body in order to heal. And when we're in her classes, there's a field of, that means all of us together, the sounds. If you need healing, you might not make sounds. You might just go to the center. But the point is, our field, when we make sounds together, is that connection. And it's waves. It's, you know, it's cells and waves. And oh, there's one other thing I really want to remember, but my time might be up. So I might have to leave you with that. But
thank you, Helen.
Yeah, I think that's enough. Thank you.
So the radiant health of cells and the potency of sound as a way of awakening that.
Before culture, we have home. That's it, that the body is our home. The water, the ocean, the cells, all those things, our mitochondria, we're all in a home together with our mitochondria and everything.
Thank you, Helen. Tata.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it okay to just speak in for like 2 minutes or something like that?
I really want to speak to domination and partnership right now.
Sure.
So don't go too far. Don't go too far
Oh,
afield.
okay.
Yeah.
Sure, don't go too far. Okay, I'll keep it in a minute. How about that? Okay. I think one of the easy ways to understand this, and I think Madeleine's already talking about it, but to understand an attachment framework. So if you come from a family that has violence and disruption in it, guess what happens when you get into new relationships? So that's actually the very simple way to understand it. So if you have violence at home in your history, and you learn that as the culture of your behavior, guess what happens when you replicate that when you get into new relationships? So let's say you contact new people, like Indigenous people, guess what happens in that relationship? Is that you start mimicking the patterns in your childhood, right? Essentially your ancestral experience. So I think that's just like a really easy way to like formulate, like in your own life, probably go, oh yeah, I do that. Like I date people and repeat the same bullshit that my parents did. And that's exactly what we're doing on a cultural scale. And that also leads to the other side of that is like, for some people, you know, like I know when you're talking about Emily Conrad, she did Haitian dance for a long time, I think.
Yes.
So that inspiration and continuum comes from outside of her culture. So it's not necessary that you actually connect with your own culture to restore your body to a certain point. Like, you know, there are ways to actually work in other people's cultures, but you are essentially getting adopted into a new attachment dynamic, if that makes sense. You're getting adopted into a new family of culture. Maybe that's like one way to like piece it together too. Yeah, it just, for me, it just makes it very common sense, less abstract to be like, yeah, I do that with my family. So I don't know, that's under a minute.
Awesome. And I often do need help making things slightly less complex and more relatable. So thank you. So yes, I see there's a comment from Maddie about there's loads of diversity among people who identify as white. So why talking about white bodies as though it's some kind of singular thing? And oh, and Kate's talking about why does violence start? Okay, so I'm going to go to that really soon, but just speaking about the usefulness of talking about white bodies, like, yes, of course, you know, there's diversity among white people, there's intersectionality among white people. But for me, the importance of talking about the white-bodied cultural soma, so hopefully we're starting to have some familiarity with cultural soma. So the patterns of how we embody ourselves and the way those patterns are reinforced and expressed by our cultures. The power of describing this phenomenon as though it were a kind of, you know, a formula, even though there's no such thing as a formula for any real human being, but describing it as a formula is essential so that we can recognize it, so that we can see it, and we can see it when it comes alive in our own bodies and our own cultures. Because, you know, we run a real risk in not actually getting to the heart of what is wrong here with us. You know, if we keep dispersing it by saying, you know, yes, we have many different lineages, and it's such a nuanced history to explore. I'm certainly not overwriting that, but I think we can all agree that there is inequality in the world that constellates around white people in general, as a whole, and that there is something that comes from the lineage of people with white bodies that contributes to the present status quo. And so it's important to look at it so that we can really understand what is that, so that we can change it, and so that we can feel it in ourselves. And so the piece I want to speak to now, and it'll be the last piece that I speak to because we're going to be reaching the end of our time and I'd like to have a good closing time, is there's an incredible incredible human being named Rian Eisler. And some of you may have heard about her. She lives in California. She's like, yeah, in her 80s now. She wrote The Chalice and the Blade in the 80s. Yeah, and that book blew my mind, because in that book she talks about, so she is Jewish. She fled the Holocaust as a young child with her parents, settled in Cuba, then immigrated to the United States, and then went on to become, like, you know, an attorney, and to get a million PhDs, and just to become generally brilliant. And she was so fed up with this notion that she encountered both in her European culture of origin and in the United States, that humans are fundamentally violent, that humans fundamentally need to dominate other humans in order to be powerful. She was like, that doesn't make any sense. So she revisited the entire historic record as it has been unearthed and maintained in the European lineage. So she's looking at pottery shards, looking at cave paintings, and she was like, you know what, all those things that you guys are saying are spears are actually tree branches with leaves on them. People in ancient cultures are celebrating life. They're not celebrating violence. What is this weirdo lens that we've got? What is that? So she did lots of studies with bonobo apes about how they organize socially. And what she saw was that there were kind of two options. And she also saw this in her studies of humans. There are kind of two options. The first option she called dominance or domination. And this way of socially organizing understands power as something that needs to be taken by force or the threat of force, violence, and sustained by force. So for me to be powerful, I need to forcibly take it from somebody else and sustain it by violence. And you can imagine the kinds of cultures that arise from that understanding of power, including, you know, what we'd call Western culture. The other model of social organizing she saw, she called partnership. And in partnership, power is understood as something that arises through the bonds of mutual benefit. So power arises through relationship. So we have partnership societies that are relating to power as something that arises through connection, versus domination societies that are relating to power as something that arises through violence. So, and my curiosity was, okay, so, because she was saying actually partnership societies have been much more prevalent throughout human history, much, much, much more prevalent throughout European history, Eastern European history. All of the research she was doing was showing all of these cultures up until about 3000 BC were largely partnership oriented. The apes that she was studying, they would do these cool things like, so Rian Eisler also wrote a book called Sacred Pleasure. And she talks about human cultures and animal cultures that actually use pleasure as a way of reinforcing connection, reinforcing relatedness. So some of these apes, for example, would sexually pleasure each other before engaging in anything else, as a way to kind of like diffuse the tension, you know, like let's just chill out and get into a good state in our bodies, and then we can really have some fun together, you know, we can pick fleas and eat food. So that's a whole other direction to go in. But this notion of domination, so it's like, where did that come from? If more human societies were partnership oriented than domination oriented, if there's loads of examples among animals, you know, of spontaneous social organizing and human-like animals, these apes, that resemble partnership, why do we do domination? If our neurobiology supports interconnection more than it does competition or violence, violence is something that happens when our nervous systems are activated by life threat. Why is it that we've become stuck in our bodies in a way that orients us towards violence and the threat of violence? So just think about that. If we're asking ourselves, where did we learn domination? Where did we learn violence? Where did we learn that power has to be taken by force? Well, I believe we learned that from our bodies. I believe that we learned that through the experience of trauma, of collective trauma. Rian Eisler talks about this certain point at like around 3000 BC, where in the far east of Europe, human cultures started exhibiting more dominance-oriented behaviors. And she believes that that was precipitated by a very, very long period of drought and famine, that people were on the verge of starvation for a really long time. And when you think about how that would be impacting their nervous systems and their bodies, and then that perhaps from that state of internal dysregulation, they started to learn a new way of relating to power because their bodies were in hyper or hypoactive states, which indicate, that I'm going to actually power over something or power under something. That's what those nervous system states actually kind of teach or condition our psychology into. Instead of being in a really integrated nervous system state, the social engagement system, which is designed to help us be in relationship. So if you think about the way our nervous system maps on to domination or partnership, we can start to get at the root of the kinds of cultural and somatic changes that I believe we as white people, we're not alone, right? Like other people can experience domination. It's not just white people who can have PTSD, obviously. There's domination, there's inequality, there's all sorts of, challenges and problems in many different cultures. But what we're talking about right now is we're talking about white bodies and the lineage of dysregulation that people of European ancestry have inherited, and the kinds of cultures we generate from that traumatized place. And and we need to look at it at the structural and systemic level. Absolutely. That's what Gary was speaking to. We need to see these broader trends and fight against inequality. But what we also need to do is restore, and I think, and this is what Diana perhaps was touching on, we need to restore the capacity within our bodies and our body minds to integrate our life experience and to remember what it is to connect in that partnership way of actually power arises through connection. And the last piece I'll say is, for me, connection arises through our ability to be in relationship with sensation in our bodies. So that's why, for me, it is a radical and culturally shifting act to restore our capacity for sensation, to restore our culture's capacity to relate with sensation, so that we can actually experience connection and start to unravel the dysregulation in our bodies and the dysregulation that's perpetuated by our cultures. And this is also true in activist cultures, like the people that who've had the most suffering from nervous system activation and adrenal fatigue and all of that, are a lot of the time in activist cultures who are working really hard to make change, but in environments that are perhaps not supportive of integration in the psyche and soma. So by doing that, by restoring that, we actually become capable of different types of relationship. So I'm wishing that I could like read the chat and integrate the chat and also be fully present at the same time, and I can't. But I'll just trust that y'all are enjoying yourselves. So, okay. So that's enough for me. What has landed for you? What do you still feel like you have questions about? What do you want to add? Just wave your hand at me, and if you want to share. Kate.
Thanks, Madelanne. I'm really psyched about this. It really means something to me, and I really struggle with moving, with dancing, with my body, and I love the fact that I can see that lineage through ancestral damage right through to now. So I'm really grateful to you and Tada for the information that you put in. And yeah, I know that it's definitely in the British psychology that lizards are in fact the royal family. So yeah, I'm not surprised we're all traumatized. Thank you so much, Madelanne.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, we got to bring our lizard brains along with us. Anybody else who'd like to contribute? Maddie. I can't hear you. Oh, there you are.
Thanks. Yeah, it's amazing to listen to everything that you're saying. It's completely fascinating. Yeah, and I just bunged in the chat about, you know, what's the origins of how did we learn inequality, and just wondering about the impact of that minority of psychopaths who tend to get into positions of extreme power over millions of people. And they are, you know, they are a minority, but they do have tended to occupy those spaces, and then because we're mirroring creatures, we internalize the image of the oppressor and all of that. But the, you know, these sort of psychopathic figures, just interested in the role that they have played and continue to play to this very day in the cultural soma.
Thank you. I mean, I think that what we're seeing is like something that has snowballed over, like a cultural soma that has snowballed over thousands of years, and into this kind of like distilled embodiment of the core wounds that it carries. You know, it's an interesting time we're living in. I think it's like as though it became more, and the core disorders became more and more and more refined and evident. And now here we have like certifiable psychopaths calling the shots. And I mean, to me, that seems like a unsurprising endpoint in the particular trajectory of trauma that has been playing out. You know, trauma disconnects our different states of consciousness. Trauma makes it harder for us to access empathy, makes it, you know, because empathy is a sensory experience. If our bodies are off limits, we're not so capable of doing that. So, you know, psychopaths who have no connection to empathy or a felt sense connection to life, to the rest of existence, you know, it's not surprising that they would suddenly, you know, they would eventually emerge, to me, given the trajectory we've been on. So what's interesting for me is when we start to heal and shift and restore, what kinds of leaders will we potentiate? And then, you know, what positive snowball can we set off by generating a more integrated cultural soma? But that may or may not speak to your point, but thank you for bringing it. Other reflections or questions? Laura.
Despite having been sort of started in this kind of funny, dislocated state, I'm now feeling really excited about how to explore whiteness through the body. Like, I've really loved what you've said, and there's a bit of me that's like, shame this isn't a course and this is like the introductory step. I mean, we're all on that course, right? That's why we're here. So it's okay, and we're gathering it from lots of places. But I just love to use my body. It's just given me like a little message to myself of like, how can I use my body to explore whiteness in ways that I know, and how can I find other ways to do that? Because like I've been scribbling away, like lots of stuff's going on in my brain, lots of resonance, and then it's like I want it to start coming into here, you know, which is what we're talking about, being integrated and questioned within my body, using my body.
Thank you, Laura. I will be starting an online body informed leadership course in September, so if you'd like to join, please do. I'll put the links for that in the chat. I'll also post a few links about just actually something I published today that writes about all of this in slightly more detail. But I don't want to detract from just hearing you. So thank you for sharing. You know, I hear that it's kind of stirring a lot and opening potentially some doors within you, and a lot of curiosity. Thanks for that. Other Midi.
Thank you. For me, I'm very clear that my job description at the moment is to deal with what's going on in my own backyard, and that means really getting together with other white people to work on white-bodied stuff. At the same time, I also, just taking a long view, I want to name what I see as green shoots, and I see that in terms of generational change. And I just love the fact that people a lot younger than me are coming in with much less of a sense of ownership issues. I think ownership is not something that the young people that I associate with anyway are so concerned with as earlier generations. And I also think that this movement of breaking out of binary gender, which I also see very much a part of younger generational thinking and being, is going to dramatically transform the cultures that are coming into being. So I just wanted to offer those, you know, my job today is working with white-bodied culture issues and my own awareness and increasing awareness among my white-bodied friends. And I also see this longer view, which I see as incredibly hopeful. Thank you.
Thanks, Vidi. Any other questions or observations? Yes, Tada, I finally finished the series. Yes, Tada's noticing that a series on the roots of white supremacy are in our bodies that I started in 2017, I've finally finished, and that's what I've posted in the chat. Yay! So yeah, I average about one blog post a year, so I'm not super quick with the writing. So actually, I'll just say it seems like we're kind of winding to a close here. So anybody that would like, you know, to share a couple of words about how this has been for you, anything that you want to say to complete, but literally just a few words each so that we have space for everybody. And feel free to just unmute yourself and speak.
Well, I just want to say thank you. You radiate from the body, like your leadership and how you presented and how you reflected back. You just radiate, yeah, this intelligence from the body and from the heart. Yeah, so thank you so much. And it's cracked open. I've been thinking about trauma, and I've been thinking so much about shame, and yeah, that how to do this work because we're triggered in our bodies. And I think shame has such a huge part, and everything you've presented has just cracked open so much. So I can't say much because I have to process it, but I just wanted to, yeah, fierce gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, I could really just say thank you as well. It's been one of the most explosive and touching and intriguing videos I've been a part of, and I'm really looking forward to kind of following your work a bit more. And it's come at the perfect time for me, thinking about the intersection between what goes on in our culture and our activism and what goes on for us, and how to be best of service without burning out. And I really love that you spoke to that. It's something that happens even when we're trying to do something positive and powerful in the world, that actually that can be the time when we get most traumatized and we can't function anymore. So yeah, thank you for everything. And I'm just a bit awestruck, starstruck, one of those kind of combinations. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you. I remember you being in another call, and I remember being like, oh, I have to find out more about this person. So I'm just really grateful that you are sharing this work, and resonates so deeply with me. And I'm so inspired to continue my work as a song leader, and to really feel the weight and the power of what I'm doing in my life as it relates to changing these systemic cultural traumas, or healing and restoring, and getting more into understanding on a broader scale, and more of a cultural understanding of what the impact can be for things that sometimes I've maybe taken for granted. So yeah, I'm just really grateful that you're doing this work, and really excited to share it with other people. Thank you. Thank you, Tada.
Anybody else? And I really welcome, if you found this conversation not so enjoyable, please share that as well. That's useful feedback and really welcome. So if you were like, that was okay, but didn't so much connect, that's okay too.
Hello. I was listening and kind of questioning about the people here in Sweden, white body people, and I wanted to discuss this with my friends, what they think about it and if they feel traumatic, not something here as well. And I also thought about my grandparents who said to me that white people are very good, and but not black people, and I couldn't really understand that when I was little, and so lots of memory and thoughts came while I was listening. Thank you so much. So you open up bigger perspective within me. Thank you.
Thank you, Akiko.
I'd like to say something, yeah. So thank you, everyone. I feel like a lot of people had a lot of experience actually around the topic. I'd like to say that I would have been interested in knowing more in terms of cultural somatics, as in how individual traumas and somatic experiences can be formed into like a compact cultural thing that is more explainable. I don't know if it makes sense. I think that also I've done and I'm still doing a lot of individual somatic practices, and that's why actually a lot of things that you were saying I'm exploring right now. And I would have been curious to kind of like amplify that to like a cultural society level. So yeah, but except that, thank you.
Thanks, Manon. Yeah, there's so much ground to cover. And I also really love, it's so important to look at how these motifs we're talking about play out culturally. So yes, thank you. I think that we should probably just honor time and close our session. So once again, really thank you for being here, and thank you for all the brilliant work that you do. And thanks for being here too, Tada. It's lovely to have our shared kind of lineage and practice present. And check out Tada's work. Tada, you're also presenting, yeah? You've got a video
Yeah,
at
I'm presenting tomorrow at 4 o'clock, which is like, yeah.
It's 4 o'clock
yeah.
Pacific time. So
Yeah, 4 o'clock Pacific time. So it's like probably 2 a.m. for everybody on the call here.
Not for the North Americans can probably make it.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm talking about you really. But thank you, Madeline. It was really fun. And congratulations. I don't know why I'm making a big deal, but it's literally like the Olympics, I feel like, because and it took 4 years. It's 27.
Hey man, I'll take the celebration. Thank you. I feel kind of like that.
Yeah, it's
having
very tricky. It's like,
completed them.
Anyways, I made a big share on Facebook because I got happy. So there you go. You'll see it over there.
Oh wow! Cheers. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope I get to see loads of you in other places. And much love and blessings on your good work in the world.
Thank you so much.
Obrigado. Bye bye.
Thank you. Blessings. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Do you want to do short tea time, or are you running?